Hello, welcome to another Tweedy Outdoors video. I thought I'd do a quick intro before I inevitably have to put my foul looking raincoat on and you know, spoiling the Tweedy joy. I'm in the Surrey Hills. I've come down to the station called Box Hill and West Humble, which I know if you are familiar with this part of the world will know is the station you go to if you want to walk up Box Hill. But I'm actually going to go over to the other side, over towards what's it called, Ranmore Common. It's rainy, the weather is far from pleasant today, and I just couldn't make up my mind where to go. I had a rare day of being excused from any kind of parental duties at home, so I thought I really need to make use of this and get out there. But it's relentless rain just about anywhere in the southeast of England, and also some bits quite strong winds, and I think I can just about put up with the rain. But when the wind is forecast for sort of 40 miles an hour plus, it's just a bit silly to be camping in an area where you don't really need to be. So I've come partly to the Surrey Hills because the forecast at least said the wind shouldn't be quite as bad here as it would be, for example, down in the South Downs. So it's not really an ideal place to find cheeky wild camp spots, and I can well see this going awry, ending up giving up and going home. That said, there's also a train strike on, which has also complicated the options and the logistics for this outing. Would quite have liked to have gone to Haslemere, visit the Temple of the Winds. I feel like this has happened before, and absolutely no trains to Haslemere whatsoever. So this is somewhere that I could get to. The trains back won't run particularly late tonight, so if I do decide to jack it in and go home, then I'm going to have to make that decision relatively early on. But in the meantime, I'll try and enjoy being outdoors despite the rain, and hopefully up here we have a vineyard to walk through. Here we are, just a short walk from Box Hill and West Humble station. We have Denbies Wine Estate. Look, grapes. That's brilliant. Love the sight of grapes, especially as my own tiny vineyard at home has been such a disaster this year. Denbies runs to an impressive, by English standards, 265 acres under vine, which at some point in history, I'm not sure if this information is still up to date, constituted 10% of all of the vineyards in England. I think that probably is out of date now. I think this was at one time the single biggest vineyard in England, but I have a feeling that information may also be out of date. But it's certainly, by English standards, a whopper. From this angle, it's probably hard to get a sense of the scale of it, but hopefully later on we'll get a bit of altitude and we can maybe look down upon it and see how it sprawls all along this hillside. Imagine that on a sunny day. Sorry about my ridiculous appearance. This is actually quite a consistent look for being in a vineyard. It is a little known fact about Tweedy that I in fact attended a viticulture course at Plumpton College. It was spread out over a year, 1 day a week over the course of a year, so sort of a 12-day course, but not all in one go, 11-day course. And one of the things that teaches you is that being a vineyard worker isn't all blue skies and sitting there with your sunny hat on, drinking rosé. It's hard work, and you've got to be out there in all conditions. We had hail, we had thunder and lightning, we had snowstorms, we had heavy rain, we had heavy winds, we also had baking hot sun. One thing I would say about the current state of these vines, I'm not sure what the grapes are, but if I had to guess, I would say they could be something like Sauvignon Blanc, and they're probably in need of a bit of summer pruning at this stage. You can see how verdant and lush all the foliage is. The downside of that, of course, is that it's shading, not that it makes much difference on a day like today, it's shading the bunches of grapes, so they're not really getting the maximal amount of sunlight that they ideally need. So what they really need to do at this point is come along and strip a lot of that foliage off. Seems a bit harsh, The vine's doing its best to survive like anyone else, but if you want to get a good crop out of that, you're going to need to strip back some of that foliage sometime fairly soon. Great footage with the cars in the way, but they have a hotel here and hopefully a shop. Well, just say I'm a bit unimpressed with Denbies. I got here around 5 p.m. and they're all closing up. The gift shop part I think was still open, but they didn't have any of their wine chilled. The restaurant bit was closing up. I could see the fridge. I could see Denbies Sparkling chilled in the fridge, but even though it was just meters away from where they were still selling the wine unchilled, they weren't able to take one out of the fridge apparently, because that section is very sort of jobs worthy, not particularly interested in actually exchanging money for goods and or services, it seems. So never mind, I shall leave Denbies empty-handed. To be honest, I never particularly like their wine anyway, so no great loss. And I have some wine with me, which would better suit tonight's meal. More of that later. Into a nice patch of woodland, sorry, slightly out of breath, just beyond the edge of Denbies Vineyard. Don't know if the mist is coming across on camera, but it feels a bit like I'm in a rainforest here. Nice bit of woodland. Some very majestic giant oak trees here. Quite a mixture really. There's silver birch there. There was a sign back there saying there was some ash mixed in amongst all this lot, but you know, sadly of course that's likely on its way out. A nice bit of woodland imagery there. Mossy thick branch of an oak tree, sort of a bit of a gap, a bit of light is illuminating it. One thing you don't seem to get a lot of in wild camping videos is the procrastination, the sometimes hour plus wandering around trying to find a good spot to set up. And during that time, often my enthusiasm for the entire endeavour wanes and dissipates. So, still a bit close to a path here. I found a spot where, you know, it's relatively flat and I can string a tarp between a couple of trees. But, you know, at this point, the thought of actually staying a whole night here just doesn't really appeal, to be honest. So perhaps I should just get on with dinner. And then at least it won't have been a completely wasted journey. I am a little bit hangry. And we'll see how I feel after that. I've set up a rubbish tarp. It has occurred to me that this is a holly thicket and therefore the ground is kind of spiky, even though they're rotting down, they're still pretty pointy. So I really do not want to camp here. It's not going to do any good for my thermarest, but now I'm here I ought to just get this overly complicated meal out of the way. Do wish I was just having a pot noodle. It would all be over in 10 minutes and I could just go home. This evening, given this balmy, summery weather, I thought it would be nice to have something from a warm climate. So I'm going to make Lebanese food, a particular favourite of mine. I don't know why I haven't featured that before in one of these videos. So I have some halloumi. I have some various things to make tabbouleh, I'm not quite sure how you pronounce that. And then I have some fava beans to make medames. So it's going to be sort of mezze. So first of all we need this vulgar wheat, this really uncouth grain. Apparently it said boil for 20 minutes. I'm not boiling it for 20 minutes. I'm going to put twice as much water as grain in there. I'm going to bring it to the boil and then just let it sit for a bit. Just have that flame on a damp July afternoon, not particularly stable, never is. It's having a good old boil. Brought that to the boil, transferred it to this cup, and I'm going to let it soak. Meanwhile, British fava beans to make medames. You can buy tins of this dish sort of already made in usually sort of Middle Eastern delis or food shops, supermarkets. But the salt content is usually incredibly high, so you know this lets you make your own decisions about that. Don't tend to look hugely appetizing in the tin, but it's nice when the finished dish is made up. I've added a bit of water in there, not much. I'm going to give it a bit of olive oil as well. So a little bit of one of those tomato stock cube things that I see to put in everything. That's instead of any salt. Well, I mean, that is quite a lot of salt probably, but hopefully less than the pre-made version. Clove of garlic, perhaps to add to the full medames there. Ideally just want to lightly squash that, but it's a bit hard with this. I'm not going to eat these big chunks, they're just sort of there to kind of give out flavour and oh well, in a very rough, half-assed way. I'm going to chop some parsley. Wish I had a bigger chopping board for this and cleaner hands. I wasn't in the woods. It's flat leaf parsley, not the curly one. You get the idea. Chopping very inefficiently some parsley there. Similarly, chop some tomatoes. This is the chunkiest tabbouleh I think I've ever seen. I'm just going to stick this back in this plastic box because it's the only thing I've got with me to house the tabbouleh, whatever you call that. It's not exactly classic camping food, is it? Right, let's chop some halloumi. Perhaps big chunks because it's not a very big pan. Put some olive oil in there. There is some halloumi in a pan. The full medames is over here. That can just sit for a bit, doing its thing. Hopefully we'll get some nice brown halloumi. One more thing we need for the tabbouleh is some lemon juice. So cut that thing in half. Oops, trying to run away. You can probably squeeze that in now. The rest of that olive oil can go in there as well. It needs a bit more than that ideally, but it'll do. And just because I'm impatient, I'm going to start mixing in the vulgar wheat. Far too much for the amount of parsley. Yeah, so again, that really should be far more finely chopped than that, the parsley, but you get the idea. It's something in that sort of rough ballpark. Right, while the halloumi is frying away, of course I brought some wine with me, and for a change, it is not Gevrey Chambertin. Of course, the classic wine for Lebanese food is Chateau Moussard. Perhaps some of you might be familiar with that, but my local shops, none of them had that. So instead I have this other Lebanese wine called Umsiat Jasp. It's a vin rouge red wine. And it's similarly a kind of a Bordeaux blend, but they always end up sort of spicier and more exotic and more interesting somehow from Lebanon. Syrah, Merlot, Tempranillo, Carignan. There we go. Back to the opening the wine. It is a bit like Chateau Moussard. It's sort of, I don't know, I'm not very good at wine descriptions for anything other than Burgundy. I'm not even sure I'm particularly good at Burgundy, but it's quite rich. Compared to Pinot Noir, it's pretty full-bodied. And it's spicy, but sort of, you know, not sort of, you know, chili spice or pepper spice, but kind of za'atar, is that a herb actually? Sumac, and those kind of Middle Eastern spices. I really could have done a better job with this tarp. Oh well. I've got more lemon, so I might as well put more lemon on the tabbouleh. And perhaps a squeeze of lemon in the full medames, why not? Okay, so here is my dinner in the woods, in the rain, wishing I could just go home. Tabbouleh, very, very rustic. Full medames on the soupy side, but I don't mind. And some grilled halloumi. Right, taste test in order. Bit of the very rustic tabbouleh with that vulgar wheat. Yeah, I mean, all the flavours are there. It's not the texture it's supposed to be, but it's okay. Next up, next up, some full medames. I believe this is eaten for, is it more of an Egyptian dish maybe? It's popular in Lebanon, but perhaps originally an Egyptian dish. I think people in Egypt eat this for breakfast. It's like baked beans. I love it. So full of umami, really comforting, warm. A bit of this grilled halloumi. Apologies if there is a bit of a dent in my usual joie de vivre. A paucity of joie de vivre. I don't seem to really be in the mood for being outdoors quite as much as I thought I would be, but the food at least is nice. So I'm going to get on and eat this and then consider my options in terms of possibly trying to get whatever trains are still running back home. Nice wine. This is incidentally far and away, I believe, the cheapest wine ever featured on Tweedy Outdoors or my offshoot channel Wine with Tweedy. I think this costs something like £12 a bottle. There we go, hashtag leave no trace. At the moment, the last train back to London is not yet cancelled, according to my phone. I ought to be able to make it back to the station in time for that. So that's the current plan. Probably getting too dark for the GoPro now. Very atmospheric in this bit of the woods. The rain and the gloom. Back to the edge of Denbies Vineyard. That's what it looks like in the evening gloom. Might be quicker to just walk down there. I seem to have gone a bit of a dog leg to get back to here, but anyway. There we go, back to Box Hill and West Humble station. Let's just hope there's actually a train. Wanted to see if I could break the record for the most pathos-filled outro to a Tweedy Outdoors video. Here I am, drowning my sorrows. A failure to spend a night in the woods. On the platform, Box Hill and West Humble, with obviously some Lebanese wine. You see this sort of thing on YouTube all the time, I imagine. I'm not quite sure what the issue is with me and wild camping the last few months. I had a good run of it in April, as you may remember, 3 weekends in a row with the Dorset trip, the Dartmoor trip, the North Wales trip, and then that sort of long hiatus, and then tried to get back into it again in June with that trip over the South Downs from Chichester to Petersfield. That went badly wrong, although I suppose technically I did still end up camping because I had no choice. And then subsequently, well, I suppose there's been Avebury, hasn't there? You know, again, I did technically camp there for the space of about 4 hours. It was a very sort of perfunctory, is that the right word? Very functional sort of a wild camp. Just lie down for 4 hours and then get back up again. Anyway, let's hope some of that was salvageable. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you on the next one. Oh, what a happy sight.